Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters. Artcasters on a Monday night. This is like a weird thing. We've never done it on a Monday night. Kind of a little early, but I've got like tons of stuff going on later. So later in the week. So this is really the only day we could do it. So, and we missed a couple weeks back. So I didn't want to do that again. So early Artcasters. So hopefully some people get a chance to watch this. Maybe some different people. I don't know, because it's just a different day, you know. But anyway, so. Let's see. Let's get started. And everyone knows Josh. Josh, tell everyone who you are.
Hi, I'm Josh Kemble, and I'm a human being. Artwork at quarterlystories.com. And it is weird that it's a Monday. I feel all covfefe about it. Yeah.
All right, and we have in our third rotating chair, our guest is Gerimi Burleigh, who I just exhibited right next to at Phoenix Comic Con, so I wanted to get him on. Say hi, everyone, Gerimi. Tell everyone what you do, Gerimi.
I'm Gerimi Burleigh. I am a comic book creator, self-publisher, writer, illustrator, author, and all-around not bad guy.
I can vouch for that.
If anybody wants to see what my stuff looks like, you can go to my website, which is gerimi.net, but it's spelled very differently. It's GERIMI.net. So you can see more stuff like this page I'm working on.
Yeah, and we'll have links to all our stuff, and you're on my channel, so you probably know who I am. So, but like I said, so I kind of wanted to kick this off, and the subject today, and we can talk about some other things too, but I don't know, a while back, Josh was asking the question if you could, you know, if it's possible to go to a comic book convention and just sell your independent comic book. And because, I mean, I do sell an independent comic book, but I also sell my own prints and all that other stuff. So it's like, you know, I didn't really have a straight answer for that, you know. Because it's difficult and it's getting harder. So, but just exhibiting next to Gerimi, kind of watching how he pitched his comic book and pitched his work, it kind of gave me some confidence that I think definitely you can, because he is doing that. I mean, Gerimi also sells prints, and I'll let him tell you about all that stuff too. But for the most part, I mean, a lot of what he does is also the comic book, and he's really good at getting people's attention and everything without being like a carnival barker and everything. But he's got some techniques and things that I'm going to sort of steal or adopt or kind of modify and try out for myself, because it really works. And of course, the caveat is that you kind of have to be a little outgoing and everything. I mean, it like anyone will say, if you're just sitting there behind your table with your head in your artwork and stuff, that's probably not a good thing. But so anyway, I wanted to kind of touch base with Gerimi on that and have him kind of explain sort of how he gets the attention of people like walking by and everything, and how he gets them involved in checking out what he has at his table and everything. Because like I said, it's not intrusive or anything. I mean, I'll kind of you know, tease it and say that he one of the things he does is a postcard, and again, I'll let him explain. But I was always of the opinion that, you know, just handing out postcards without, you know, being solicited for them, or you know, I never thought that would work, because, you know, when you go to, if you go to Las Vegas and people are always handing out postcards, and people are like, no, I don't want that. But I was so surprised that people actually were like lit up, and they were like happy to get the postcard for the most part. Every once in a while, you got somebody like, no, but it seemed to really work. So why don't you kind of go into sort of what your pitch is, Gerimi, and how you kind of get people to the table and everything like that, and how you like sell your comic and your prints and all that stuff.
Well, first off, yeah, you're very right. Nobody likes the carnival barker. It's annoying. You don't want to piss people off, because they're there just to have fun, and the last thing you want is to scare people off or come off desperate and clingy. So the first step really is being genuinely friendly. So, I mean, I watch people going by, and the first thing is really eye contact. I just look at people and I smile and I say hello. Because there's lots of people, basically, I'll just sit there, and as people go by, I just say, hi, you know, hi, how you doing? You know, having a good time at the show? And just saying hello to people will give you an idea of whether they're receptive or not.
Yeah.
Because some people just in general, whether they're shy or they're on their way to a panel or they're looking for a different artist and they're not interested in you, a lot of people will just not even make eye contact. I know that you said that you were surprised that, like, I only had a few people that seemed like they weren't interested. I actually get a lot of people who are like, I don't even want your postcard. Like, I would say probably 50% of the people that pass by, if not more, just don't even want the postcard. But the first step is simply greeting someone and being friendly, and not even like I'm trying to get anything out of you. Just the way you would say hi to somebody if you're passing on the street and you happen to be in a good mood and felt like saying hi to a stranger. But once people say hi back, I will offer them a postcard. I just simply say free postcard as they're going by.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And I think there's something about having the right tone of voice, because I don't have a very demanding tone of voice. Like, here, take this postcard. I don't try to say, like, I'm not trying to hustle like postcard here, postcard. That's more in the vein of the carnival barker. I just say, like, I have something. I'm offering it to you. The same way you'd offer someone a tissue if they sneezed, like, free postcard. And some people are like, cool, thanks. Some people are just like, no. Some people just, like, they may look at it but just keep on walking. And I'm like, you know, if they do actually say no thank you, I just sort of nod and smile, and it's like, no problem. Because it's not like my whole point of view is that I'm not trying to trick someone into reading my comics. I'm trying to con someone into buying my stuff. I want somebody to read it who's actually interested in reading a story by an indie creator and thinks the type of work I'm doing sounds like something they'd enjoy. Because if they do enjoy the type of work I'm creating, they're going to come back and they're going to want to read the next issue or the next book I have. So I'm not trying to pull anything over on anybody.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of after offering the postcard, if they slow down, like they look like they're not in a hurry, I tell them, you know, feel free to browse. Take a look at, I've got some comics, I've got some prints, you know, some original artwork. And then from there, it's really up to the person. Depending on the particular con goer, some people will just, you know, they may look a little bit and then keep walking. Some of them, they'll gravitate towards the original, start looking through the original. Some will start looking through my prints. If people start looking at the comics, then I give them a minute to look and see at which book they're most interested in, what they're drawn to. Because I've got a couple of trades at my table, and I will wait and see whichever one they seem to be looking at the most, and I'll give them the pitch on that one unsolicited. Now, it's a good sign if they just say, hey, so what is Morningstar about? That's the Western I'm doing. Or they'll say, what is Eye of the Gods about? If they, on their own, ask what my comics are about, that means that they're genuinely interested and they're open to reading something from an indie creator.
Yeah.
That makes pitching a lot easier.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because I mean, I do a lot of that. I mean, but it just seems different. I don't know if it's the order that you do things or whatever, because I do. It seems like I've got all that in my formula, but it's in another order. Like usually I'll kind of up, you know, and like I said, I'll probably change this, but up until now, I kind of waited. Well, what I would do is, you know, and hopefully I've got a pleasant voice. I don't know, but it's kind of like, you know, I'm kind of
You
like,
have a very pleasant voice.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of like, hi, how's it going? So I do that too, but it's like, but after, and it's like, oh, it's, you know, it's fine or whatever. And some people don't say anything or whatever, but it seems like after that, it's like free postcard, that thing, and that sort, and then once you get to that part where you say feel free to browse, I was just surprised how many people actually, some people were even walking away, and when you said feel free to browse, they would turn around and come right back to your table. And, you know, so basically the way I've been doing it is just like, hey, how's it going? And if but I usually do wait until we kind of glance at each other or something, if I can lock eyes, if they're sort of like, if somebody's just walking by, and they don't look at anything at all, I usually don't say anything. But I don't know because it seems like, and maybe, you know, I was also kind of watching my table, but it seems like sometimes if somebody was just walking by, you kind of ask a question, free postcard, and then they'd stop and say, yeah, cool. And maybe they weren't even looking. I don't know if if you wait for somebody to make eye contact or whatever. But see, I kind of wait until they're, if they look at everything and looks like they're not going to buy, then that's when I've always given them the postcard. I've said, well, because it's like, I also have an online store or anything, but I don't want to say that off the bat, because some people just need an excuse not to buy something. If they're like, oh, you got an online store, then it kind of gives them an out, so they can just walk away and say, oh yeah, well, I'll check you out online. And that may or may not happen. But if you know that they're about to leave, then that's when I give it to them. But I don't know. I think your order of doing things works a lot better than the way I'm doing it. So.
Well, part of that might be that there's a way of thinking of handing out the postcard as sort of like, all right, I'm not going to get them with the sale, so let me at least give them something, and hopefully they'll look at my stuff online later on. And when I hand them the postcard, I look at that as sort of, that's the first salvo in terms of like seeing if they're engaged. But I also realize that it's very possible that they might be interested in my work, but just don't have time to stop.
Right.
And giving them the postcard means that if they do nothing but take the postcard and walk on, they don't feel pressure to shop. They're like, they've got the postcard. If they don't want it, they can just toss it. That's fine. But it's sort of like, I've had people take my postcard, stop it all. They kept walking, and then they've come back the next day because they were looking at the postcard, and they were like, this looks interesting. I've been carrying this around. So sometimes I'm willing to, I try to make it as much of a low pressure scenario as possible.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel like, oh, I'm trying to get them to buy. I just want to see if they're interested. And somebody may not be interested at that very moment, but then the next day or the day later, I've had people who told me that they didn't really stop at my table, but they had the postcard, they thought it was cool, and they've been looking at it, it's like pinned to their wall for like a year. And the next year when I'm at a show, they're like, I stopped at your table because I've been looking at your postcard for a year.
I heard somebody say that this last weekend.
There
was
were
it last weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 weekends.
2 weekends, all right.
But, yeah, there were a couple of people that said that, and that's very gratifying to me. And I would tell them that I'm glad that my artwork was memorable enough that it stuck out in your mind and that you want to look at it for that long.
That makes sense, because like I do remember when I was younger, and I would pick up like previews. Like, this is back when there was like the newsprint previews,
Mm-hmm.
At like a comic shop. Sometimes I would just cut out art I liked and put it on my walls, and then like a year later buy the book. So that makes kind of sense. But one question I wanted to ask is like, what does your postcard look like? You must have chosen something pretty appealing to like for somebody to put it on their wall later on, right?
I will show you right now because I've got a couple right here. Let's see. All right, I just had to reach into my closet. I've got a little supply closet for all my convention gear. And here's the first thing. I have used many different pieces of artwork for postcards over the years. So this gets into the whole idea of A/B testing, trying different things out and seeing what people like. This image is my top selling print. Hang on, let me bring it close to the camera there.
Nice.
It's a woman with a wind-up key in her back. And I don't know how clear it looks on the...
That's pretty clear. We can see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this image, I think it's a pretty striking image. But it wasn't the image that I started out with when I was doing postcards conventions. But this particular piece, when I started offering as a print, was the thing I sold the most of. So I thought, this is the thing that people seem to be really drawn to. I should make postcards of this because people will actually take this and they'll remember it and they'll look at it later on.
Yeah.
And then I have one other postcard, a second most popular print. And it's actually a photo manipulation because I've got like a figure drawing skeleton by my table. I just sort of like was looking at it one day and I just saw this whole image in my mind. So I just took a picture of it, took it into Photoshop, inverted it to look like an X-ray and added the wings. Yeah, so these two pieces are my highest selling prints. And I used the fact that those were things that people were paying money for.
Yeah.
This is what I should make my giveaways.
That is pretty smart.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this stuff comes down to a lot of trial and error. Like when we first started talking about just the idea of refining your pitch, I was afraid Scott was going to get sick of hearing me pitching my book because I literally give my pitch at least once a minute. Well, probably not once a minute, but let's say in a given hour, I probably pitch it 30, at least anywhere from 30 to 40 times an hour. I give my pitch.
Yeah, well, I've got pitches for most of my stuff too, and I've got pretty much the same pitch for my comic. But I don't know if it's just because I've got so much stuff on the table that, half the time they don't even look at the comic. And another thing that I think I'm going to have to start doing because I have so many things, and I'm going to do a lot of things different in my next show. But and I've done this with certain products, but I think with each product, somehow I'm going to have to put what that product is like on the back of it because everything's facing the con-goers. So people will be, since I have so many different things, people will be looking at something and I'm pitching something that they might not necessarily be looking at, because I can't see like at each print, like they'll hold up a print, but I'm just seeing the back of it. So I think I need to like label my prints on the back. So when they pick it up, then I can talk about which one it is that they picked up and things like that. So that's just a little, an idea for anyone who has a lot of stuff on their table. But yeah, but the thing is, as far as your pitch, Gerimi, it's like you've got a story for every single thing that you have. You've got a pitch for every single product. And I've sort of got that a little bit, but yours is a little more personal. You kind of go into what inspired it and everything. And I think that really, really gets people. But I know Josh was about to say something, so I'll let Josh.
I was just chiming in on the notes on the back of prints. So my friend Chris, he does pretty well at conventions and he sells a lot of prints. That's one of the things he does. He has like a little sticker system that's on the back of all of his prints so that he can not only do that, but like without looking too salesy, like when he actually gives it to them, he already knows which print he's selling so he can track it later. So yeah, he puts like a label on the back of the print so that he knows. And like you were saying, so he can just start explaining the print without being like, oh, hey, can I see what you're looking at? Like, that's a good idea.
But so Gerimi, like I was saying, you've got kind of a different story you've got at the ready for like almost each one of your prints. And it's not like, it kind of starts off that way, but it's like, obviously you have sort of that pitch, but then once people start conversating, you're really good at like, just, off the top of your head, and just basically having a conversation with people, but you usually start off with some kind of background on each one of your items.
Well, yeah, that was one of the things when I started doing conventions that I think all of us struggle with the idea of salesmanship in that way to sell our work, but in a way that feels authentic. Because we don't want to be salesy, we don't want to necessarily be salesmen, we want to be artists, but we have to properly represent our work. Yeah. And the way that I found to interpret it and to internalize it is show and tell, because we're going up and pitching something and presenting it and to convince someone to take an action, like we're having to lure them in and trap them or something. Yeah. But we all loved show and tell as a kid. Your favorite toy to your class, standing up in front of like a whole bunch of kids, some you knew, some you didn't, some you may not even liked, but telling them, this is my favorite toy, this is why I love it, this is why I think it's cool about it. Or like a science project or a vacation that your family went on. Like show and tell was all about taking these things that we're really passionate about and sharing it with other people. And what comics and our own artwork are we more passionate about, right?
Yeah.
So I really think of it like what I try to do is I try to get the selling out of the way instantly. So when people come to my table, I tell them, I've got comics, I've got prints, I've got originals. I'll tell them what the prices of the prints are. Or I'll give them like the basic pitch on whatever my comics seem to be looking at. And after that, I really just try to talk with them and really just have a conversation. And I'll have a conversation about the artwork. So as they're flipping through, I'll tell them, oh yeah, well, I had this idea when I was thinking of this piece, or I like working in this medium. But I try to tell them a little bit about me, and then I try to make it more about them. I may mention something about the type of medium I use, and then I'll say, do you guys like artwork that's in pencil? Do you prefer painters, or is there a particular style or genre of artwork you guys like? Or who's your favorite comic character? What books are you reading right now? And I try to just, once I get the selling out of the way, I just try to have a cool conversation with somebody I just met about what they think is cool.
Yeah, and I think that's cool. And again, I think it's sort of a matter of the order you do it in. I like that idea of getting that out of the way, because I kind of wait, and I kind of wait till they're a little, like if they're looking at my prints, and usually I won't even mention it, but I'll kind of wait, and if they're looking and they're kind of pointing at different prints, or they're talking about different prints, then I'll say, I got a special, if you buy 2, get 1 free type of thing. But I like your idea of just getting that out of the way. And I mean, and kind of, like you said, kind of bringing them in, because you often ask them, like, what are you guys into? You like comics? You like, what are you into, horror? Are you into sci-fi? And that kind of brings them kind of into that conversation, and it's really effective.
Yeah.
Well, I figure, in general, people, who it was who told me this, but you don't pick your audience. People like what they like about your work, and if you try to tell them what they're supposed to like, you will lose them.
Right.
People come to work with their own points of view and their own interests and their own interpretations. And even if I tell someone what I was thinking when I created it, I will also usually try to point out that I intentionally leave stuff open-ended, because I want people to bring their own points of view. Like, I try to do artwork that's provocative in the sense that it's thought-provoking, but not that I want people to think, but I don't want to tell them what to think.
Yeah.
Right. It's similar to like a lot of songwriters. Like, sometimes they'll tell you what their inspiration was, and sometimes they'll be cryptic about it. And I'm like, why can't you just say what inspired you to write this song? What's it really about? But again, you want people to make up their own decision, so it means something. What does it mean to them?
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, all of these things they're all flexible, because you also have to be, this is the hardest part, is learning how, I don't want to say how to read people, because that again sounds manipulative. It's not about reading them. It really is about listening to them, but it's more than just listening with your ears. It's about trying to be open to their interests and how they feel and how they're approaching.
Yeah.
Because I have talked to people who anything about the artwork at all, and I will pull back on how much I tell them about where I came with the idea of it, and I may just tell them, or I may just ask them questions about more of their artwork, or what they think about certain things, or how it makes them feel. There are some people who want to know exactly what the creator was thinking when they made this, and for those people, I can tell them exactly what I was thinking when I made most of the pieces.
Yeah.
And I try to, it's taken me a very long time to learn how, and I'm obviously not like I'm an expert at it, but it's taken me a long time to learn how to really be open to a stranger and try to be receptive to what a person I've just met a few seconds ago is thinking or feeling. And I think that I had to work on it as, as a lot of artists, we tend to be kind of introverted. Not all, but a lot of artists are. And I think just growing up and going through life, my whole life has been a journey from being kind of quiet and self-contained to learning how to engage people more.
Yeah.
And kind of trying to find that middle ground between where I end and the other person begins.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that I'm any less introverted than I was as a child, in the sense that I'm still somebody who likes to spend a lot of time by myself at the drawing table. Like, if honestly, for as much talking as you may have seen, as Scott saw me do at the convention, I'm like so mentally drained by the end of the show from doing all that talking that I'm fine if I don't see another human being for a month.
Yeah, because I was going to ask if you would, I was going to ask if you consider yourself an introvert, because I've got that too. Because I'll pitch stuff and I get on YouTube and do all this stuff, and I've had people say, "You're not an introvert. You're on YouTube and you're talking and hamming it up and doing all this stuff." But it's not just that; it's different, So I was curious, but I guess I have to. Because if I was to guess, I would say no. Jeremy's not an introvert, but
well, the actual definition between introverts and extroverts is that extroverts gain energy from being around other people. If they're alone, it brings them. And whereas introverts, we gain energy from being alone, and being around other people drains us.
True.
So introversion often goes hand in hand with shyness, but they're not the same thing. I'm not shy, but I am very much an introvert. And I think that it's learned behavior also. I started out, I was very, very shy as a child. And I think that art, we also, for artists, we use it as a shield. We hide behind our work a little bit, where it can be the interesting thing so we don't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I learned to use it as a vehicle to connect with people, to talk with people. And, like for all of us, presenting our work online and doing YouTube videos and talking with people in art casting, the way I started thinking about it, because it was kind of a mental hump for me to get over, doing my own YouTube videos. And the way I started to think about it, I have all of these crazy thoughts and ideas in my head, all these stories I create, and my thoughts inside run a mile a minute, but I don't necessarily talk as much to people about those things. And what I've tried to think of it as is letting people into that inner monologue. I'm trying to share thoughts I'm having in my head with people. Obviously not the really dark ones, but just in general, the interesting, creative, inspirational thoughts. And that's how, when I'm at a convention, when I'm talking to people about my work, it's how I do it when I'm doing my YouTube channel and posting videos, is just saying, all right, me having to do something that's difficult, that I'm uncomfortable with, I just trick myself into thinking it's almost like the rest of the world becomes the voices in my head.
Yeah.
The inner, not the crazy voices in your head, but our creative inner monologue.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm letting you and anybody that's watching this, or anybody I'm talking to at a convention, I'm letting them inner monologue that I've got going on.
Yeah. That's good. So I think that's cool too, because that touches on some things I think about a lot, especially. I've been doing, I did podcasting for a while and stuff like that. And so I've grown comfortable, talking to a camera and stuff like that through the vlog. But it took me a while to get comfortable just talking to people in general, groups of people. And then when I was teaching, I had to start working on that. And now that I'm managing, it's that has been a huge thing that I've been focused on, is trying to get better at emotional intelligence, which I think is what you're hitting on, where it's people communicate with more than just words. And I think for someone like me who's an artist, I think visually, so I can read people's visual communication, but sometimes I miss really obvious stuff. And so it is hard sometimes to go beyond just the verbal. For instance, most artists and cartoonists and people who are fans of comics aren't the most popular people on the planet. So when they come by your booth and they're kind of hesitant to look at stuff, a lot of the time that's not going to be just because they don't like your stuff. It's just because they're socially awkward, weird people just like we are, You know, so like, how do you kind of like engage that and like make somebody like that like open up and like, you know, engage and have it be like a positive experience for both people? So I think that's really cool. And then I think what you were touching on with like the just kind of sharing what's in your head is like, I just did a vlog about this, but it's like vulnerability. It's like a huge thing. I think like, to me, if I think about the people I respect the most, they tend to be people who are willing and able to be vulnerable. Because it's not an easy task, you know? And to be able to like let somebody in like that, even if it's positive thoughts you have about your own work, that's opening up vulnerability, which is like really frightening to some people, especially artists, where we save all our vulnerability for this stuff, you know? So I think that's really cool, you know? I kind of want to, like, so all that said, I'm still super uncomfortable pitching comics, like pitching my own work. And like illustrations or prints are a lot easier to pitch for me because usually the concept's like there, you know? But like, I'm curious, like, because it sounds like you have like a couple pitches like really perfected for multiple books. So like, I want to hear your pitch for one thing because I'm fascinated because Scott's been talking you up, and then I also like, I'm curious like how you arrived at that. Like, what was the first version like, if you can remember? You know, I'm curious like how you came about like coming up with a pitch you're comfortable with, or is this just me being grass is greener and maybe nobody's comfortable with their pitch? I don't know.
Well, I definitely think that it starts with trying to sum up the main, your log line. I think a lot of it came from. All right, well, no, let me try and run it back. A lot of this, I have to stop drawing because now I've really got to think. Screenwriting podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts about screenwriting because when you listen to podcasts about comics, even when they have writers on there, they don't necessarily get into the nuts and bolts of the mechanics of writing.
Yeah.
We'll talk a lot about like the quirks of writing comics in terms of like having interweaving arcs of multiple characters and the mechanics of panels and page turns, but they don't necessarily talk about literature writing. And when you listen to podcasts about literature, they tend to be a little bit more esoteric and poetic and going a lot more about theme.
Yeah.
And when you listen to podcasts about screenwriting talks about the nuts and bolts of plot, pacing, structure, dialogue. They literally talk about, okay, forget about whether your idea is a good idea or a bad idea. This is how you build a car.
Yeah.
They talk about a lot more like that in terms of like, this is where you put the motor, this is where the wheels are, this is where the seats are, basic ingredients in order to have a car. And you can design any kind of car you want. You can put 6 wheels on it if you want. You can put 3 wheels on it if you want. But this is the basic elements of a car. So I listen to a lot of screenwriting podcasts. And while writing the screenplay doesn't start with this, when it comes to selling your work, they say the first thing you start with is your log line, meaning summing up your story in one sentence.
Yeah, that's so tough.
But yeah, I think it definitely is tough. And a lot of the most interesting stories are difficult to sum up in one sentence. I mean, a lot of stuff I love. I mean, Watchmen. How the hell do you sum up Watchmen in one sentence?
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of comics that are great and lots of film and other literature that are unique, works of art that can't be summed up in one sentence. However, for me, I always treat everything like I'm the first audience and what's going to get me. So I said, what is a log line description for my books that's going to sucker me in? Like, what's this line that's gonna make me go, ooh? Yeah. So I will tell you the one sentence line for my comic book Morningstar is that it's Lucifer's fall from heaven, but told as a Western.
Nice.
So right there, it tells you, all right, do you like angels and devils? Do you like Westerns? If you like those two things, you at least have your attention.
Yeah.
And also the fact that it takes a story that you're extremely familiar with, but completely recontextualizes it.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm taking a sip of water. Basically, after that, very quick description, which is that at the dawn of creation, the universe is this raw, untamed frontier. It's a wild west. There's 7 archangels that are like the Magnificent Seven, and Lucifer begins the story as the Marshal of Heaven. He's actually their leader because he wasn't created to be evil. He was supposed to be the brightest of all the angels. He was supposed to be perfect. So where did things go wrong? The story ends, but I'm telling you a story of how we got there. So with guns and horses. Basically, it's Paradise Lost meets Unforgiven.
Nice.
That right there is my pitch. And usually when I tell someone that, if they aren't interested, it's because they don't like Westerns or they are not particularly interested in a story about Lucifer. If they're open to either of those things, that usually, even if I've had plenty of people who don't buy my book who really like the pitch.
Yeah.
And they're like, that sounds like something I'm really interested in. I'm not going to buy it now. But a lot of times people will say, hey, can I get your postcard? Can I get this online?
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, maybe that's, again, now I'm backtracking. But that's another thing about the postcards. A lot of times people are actually interested, but they've blown their convention budget. So I always want to make sure that they've got a postcard. I don't get a ton of online sales, but I do have people that buy it off of Comixology or buy it on Kindle, or they order a print copy from me and I mail them out. So, that's still another worthwhile thing for getting the postcard into people's hands.
Yeah.
But I think the idea, like you said, it's difficult not only to sum your idea up into one sentence that encapsulates the whole thing, but then also to give somebody, like what I told you after that log line is basically a verbal movie trailer. It's, setting up, this is what what you'd see in a TV commercial. Yeah. So if you could tell somebody in 30 seconds or less, the elevator pitch, you've heard that term before. Yeah. Yeah, having a really strong log line and having a strong elevator pitch. And I would say with Morningstar, I can't remember exactly what form it took when I first started pitching it. But I will tell you that the pitch that I just gave you, that's been refined over like 2 or 3 years of giving the pitch. Yeah. And that's one of the things that doing conventions helps you with. Because it's not necessarily that I did my pitch for like a couple of conventions and said, all right, this pitch isn't working, I'm going to rewrite it from scratch. What really happens is that, because I started this book, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, I published a sketchbook a long time ago, like they put out the first issue. But when I started selling the first issue, over the past few years, what would happen is I would give the pitch, and each time I give the pitch, I would watch what words people responded to. Yeah. Change one word here, one word there, put emphasis on one word as opposed to another. And the crafted now, it was honed like one word at a time over a few years. Yeah. And I only do usually like 6 conventions a year. One year I maybe did like 9 shows, but over each year when I'm doing those 5 or 6 conventions, I'm pitching it over and over again, and I'm constantly tweaking it and changing it. And even this year, I know that there was a point where just something as subtle as moving the part where Lucifer is the Marshal of Heaven, moving that to before saying that he's the leader of those other angels. Yeah. Like there's things where I just change the word order here and there just to see how people react. Yeah. That's actually really super valuable, So then to get that, to arrive at that pitch though, because I'm imagining
I mean, that's really boiled down compared to what like the actual content of your story is. So like, but it seems like you're intentionally like throwing in like points of reference for like somebody who, you know, once again, like it almost like you're viewing it as if you had never seen it before. You know, it's like you're giving people like little entryways by referencing other stuff, you know, because it doesn't, you know, like, I don't think your work would be derivative, you know, but it's like, does the pitch have to kind of have derivative stuff in it to kind of engage the person? Because I think about myself and it probably does, huh? I don't know.
I mean, it's always good because I do the same thing with mine. When he says, what did you say? Unforgiven meets Paradise Lost?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I always say Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead, because right away it's like, oh, okay, those things, because they're things people can relate to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So even though it's not totally like that, but it's in the genre. And then after that, I kind of go in, and then I'll try to distance it a little ways. But I'll still say, you know, it's my homage to movies like Goonies and Monster Squad. I mean, you guys have heard my pitch a million times, but I think Josh, I think you've got a nice pitch. I'm just wondering if, I love the end part where you say, and hopefully hand to you. I don't know if that would work in a in-person scenario. It might, if you can make it kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, hopefully hand to you, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got a good pitch. I mean, I don't know. Again, it's kind of like Jeremy was saying. You kind of have to test it out and see how receptive people are to it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to probably reference something. You know, like
if you can compare it to something else.
It's difficult with autobio stuff, but again, I'm sure like I could bring up like High Fidelity, which isn't autobio, but it has that kind of feel, you know. I could bring up like Blankets because people are familiar with Blankets, you know. Yeah, I think that's actually this is a good conversation. It's making me think.
Well, I thought it would be really valuable to you, especially just because I know that you're going to go to the convention with the intention of basically marketing pretty much your book. And the other thing I noticed that there are people out there that do it, and I think in some ways that might be better, because like with mine, it's just like, I think everything, I'm really, next show I do, I think I'm really going to try to find a way to kind of simplify things, because there's so much stuff at my table, it gets confusing. And I don't necessarily mean I'm only going to like go there with my book, but I have seen people like, and I'm going to have a video in probably a day or two that kind of where I do interviews, and I also do one with Jeremy and everything, but I'll post that. But I talked to some independent artists, and there's this guy, Jay Gonzo, that has this book that's really cool. And for the most part, that's kind of all he has is his book. But because that's all he has, and it's so striking, the covers and everything, you can sell it. I mean, because I think in a lot of ways at conventions, less is more, because there's so much stuff to look at. So I'm really trying to reevaluate my whole way of thinking, because, you know, I have always considered myself, as much as I think Jeremy's really good at pitching, I think I'm really good at like presentation and just branding. But sometimes that, in a convention where there's so much of that, sometimes it's hard to wrap all that in. So I'm thinking of some other ways to like simplify some stuff going forward.
Yes. So like, well, how many, like that's actually bringing a good topic in. So like, so you clearly have been pitching your comic a lot, you know? So like, what are your, you know, without having to reveal, like, I don't want to pull up the hood entirely and be like, how much money do you make? But I'm more curious, like, in percentage of sales, like how much of your booth is carried by prints, and then how much of it's carried by your comics?
Are you asking Jeremy or me?
Yeah, Jeremy.
Okay.
Well, that's a really good question. Say right now it is generally 60-40 in favor of the comics.
Oh, wow.
I've definitely had shows where the prints were 50-50 or even 60-40 in favor of the prints, but that's been show specific. It isn't necessarily something that happens overall. When I first started doing conventions, because I think my first book I self-published in 2009. So basically, I've been doing conventions for, God, almost a decade now. Yeah. When I think of the time, it really flies. When I first started doing conventions, I sold almost no prints, and it was really just the comics. My sales, I was definitely had a period probably over the first, I'd say over the first 2 years, I didn't make table every show.
Yeah.
I think that's common for a lot of creators.
Oh, yeah.
But it's one of those things where, do you get frustrated and say, all right, screw it, I'm throwing money away and I'm going to stop? Or do you keep fighting it out and saying, all right, how can I keep tweaking this? How can I keep trying different things?
Yeah.
And one of the things that changed for me was moving from 8.5 by 11 prints to 11 by 17 prints. Because it used to be that I didn't want to invest a whole lot of money in prints and go out and spend money getting prints made. So I was just using 8.5 by 11 prints that I was doing on like high quality photo paper, but printing off of my my inkjet printer at home. I got a pretty good Epson printer. You know, they'll give you, you know, good decent quality. But I just was not selling hardly any 8.5 by 11 prints. And a friend of mine finally convinced me, you know, why don't you go up to 11 by 17? I said, well, I don't know if people are going to pay that much money for my prints, and I'm going to have to go out and invest money into it. And my friends told me, well, the thing is, I sell my prints for my 8.5 by 11s. I was selling for $10. So I thought, I don't do a lot of fan art. It's all just, you know, paintings and sketches and stuff that I was doing on my own. I thought for somebody who no one really knows, if they just think it's a cool image, they might pay $10 for it, but they weren't moving. And I thought, well, how about selling them? I didn't think anyone would pay $20 for a print from someone that they weren't a fan of or didn't know.
Yeah.
And I've definitely seen other artists do that, so I know that that's not true. But for me, I wanted to keep my prints low costs.
Yeah.
My friends told me, well, why don't you do them 15 or 2 for $20? That way, if you sell 2 of them, you're still selling them at that $10 price point. But, you know, so you're spreading it across 2 of them. You're kind of amortizing the cost. So you're still making a decent margin because you're moving more pieces.
Yeah.
So I did it at that price point, and that's when they really started to move. And from there, over the past few years, I haven't done anywhere near as many prints as I should do, because I've seen my prints move well enough that I think if I were just an artist who did my own original work doing prints, so that let's say I did like a new print every other week. So I had like a few prints, 1 or 2 prints a month that I was releasing new.
Yeah.
I might not get the type of audience where people have to get every print I own because people only have so much wall space. But between having, you know, anywhere from 20 to 40 or 50 new prints a year, I could also have enough that I could sell an art book. And I think that I could probably come close to making day job money if I were cranking out that many prints. But that means I would completely have to stop making comics and just do that.
Yeah.
I find that this whole thing of like trying to find the way to make the comic sustainable, it's an ongoing struggle, because you need to have a certain base of money to allow you to have the time that comics take. Because it takes me much more time to make, obviously, a comic page than it does to make 1 print.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the comics are the thing I'm passionate about these standalone images that I do too. I would not want to stop doing comics just to make prints either. I mean, there's times where my wife has looked at me and said, you know, if you really want to do your own thing, just do this and you could probably make it financially viable. So I've been doing more and more prints. And as I've been doing them and releasing new prints every year, I usually only introduced about 3 or 4 new images a year. But I've been trying to get to the point where I'm doing more than that. I keep telling myself that I'm going to try and do 1 new print a month and then use whatever spare time I have left to just do comics. And I don't do that. I've come nowhere near that. In fact, I think last year was on the low end. I only did 2 prints. So now I've already got 4 prints that I have in the works in various stages of completion that I plan to release over the course of this year. But the prints have become more and more of my business as I've continued to do them.
Yeah.
And I've also dabbled with other items. Like I know Scott, he has a whole variety of stickers and, really cool science-themed items to offer to people. I used to sell, I tried selling candles. Like I got stickers printed with some of my artwork, and I would wrap them on candles because I thought, I always see cool looking candles at Hot Topic. So having candles that, like, instead of having the Madonna candles that people buy, like the religious ones, instead it's going to label on it with like a cool, pin on it, or like my wind-up girl, or the Death Angel, that skeleton with the wings. Like, and those would sell, but they wouldn't sell anywhere near as much as the prints and the comics.
Yeah.
I also tried doing journals where I would get a blank journal, stickers on it, and then I was just making, whatever the markup was between what I paid for the journal versus what I was selling for at shows.
Mm-hmm.
And those also sold decently, but in the end, it was taking up room on my table, where it seemed like my staples were the comics, the prints, and the originals. So I've pared back down from that. Like, I was going up for a little while, and now I'm back down to, those are the 3 things that I move on a regular basis, so I'm going to stick with just that.
Nice. Yeah. So, like, one question I have is, like, so with the comics, so, like, if you're selling prints, do you, like, usually sneak in the comic as well? Like, if somebody's drawn to a print, you're, like, pushing the comic as well? I'm just curious.
You've asked the magic question. Well, yes. Halfway, because what I do is, instead of having my the way I sell my prints, I don't have them standing upright in a tray the way that a lot of people have them at conventions, or in like a bin that you can flip through. I have them in a binder, and I have people flip through the binder, and then whichever ones they purchase, I have them behind the table, like, just individually, and I pull them out, and I'll sign them, slip them in plastic, and sell them. But halfway, more than halfway through, towards the back end of the prints, there are prints that are the covers of my the individual issues, because my Western Morningstar, I now have a trade that has issues 1 through 4 in there, and I have the original covers as prints without the logo on it, so it's just the cover art.
Nice.
And when people get through the book, they'll see and they're like, oh, these are pretty cool. This is different. The angels with guns and cowboy hats, and then I go into the pitch. I say, oh, these are the original covers from the Western. So the prints tie in to the tie into the comic. It's a way, because there are a lot of people who come to conventions. Well, that's one of the things when I ask people what they're into. There are people who come to conventions and they love cool fantasy and science fiction and horror art, but they don't read comics. Only read comics and they don't look at prints, or they don't really buy them. But I have had people who were really just into the artwork. They happen to come across the print of one of the books. They ask what it's about. I give them the pitch. They're like, you know what? I want to read that. And they end up buying they sometimes will forget about the print and they'll buy the comic instead. Sometimes they'll buy both.
That's awesome. I've seen that in action, and it's really effective when they're flipping through, and then he starts talking about the covers of the book, and then, based on my experience, I wasn't paying attention to everything, but a lot of times they'll walk away with a book. It's pretty genius, actually.
That's ideal. And, like, so then another question, like, so how many trades are you selling there? Like, do you have?
Well, I was gonna say, before we go into this question, I wanted to follow up the that thing that sounds like a great idea. This year is the first year I've done it. This is the second convention where I started selling the covers. So for as many years as I've been doing, it only occurred to me just this past year. Well, here's the thing. My other graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, I'll give you the pitch on that one later. But that one, for years, that was my convention banner. And it's a picture of a guy drowning in a sea of eyeballs. And people, whenever they were walking by my table, even if they didn't stop, they would just look Some people would look and like, oh my God, that looks so cool. Some people were like, oh my God, that's creepy. Some people would back away from my table because this field of eyeballs just weirded them out. But it was very eye-catching. And it occurred to me, wow, so many people stop and look at that banner. Why am I not selling that as a print?
Yeah.
And as soon as I had that thought, I said, for that matter, why am I not selling my other comics covers as prints? So these ideas, it's all trial and error. And I would honestly say most of the stuff that's been working for me in terms of selling stuff at conventions happened if I didn't just keep doing it in good years and bad years and just continue experimenting. Because like I said, something that's been working really well this year only occurred to me recently.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So I've got a few questions.
So you're going to ask a question about the trades.
Yeah, I'll let Josh go, and then I've got questions too.
No, you're good. Go.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to ask about as far as trades go, because we did a trade for the Eye of the Gods, so I've got that now, but I've got a lot of your floppies. Do you think trades sell better than floppies, or because I didn't see a lot of floppies at your table, so now that you've got a trade of Morningstar, can you move that better than you can floppies, or is there a difference, or what is the difference?
I think that this is going to have to take a little bit of. I'm going to need a few more shows to really gauge it, because I found that when I first started selling, when I first published my first graphic novel, that one was an OGN. It was published as a graphic novel. I never did single issues. So when I started doing Morningstar, part of the idea, I wanted to have all of my work at $5 price point, $5 increments. So I want to have something to sell people at $5, at $10, at $15, and anything above that was usually like originals or something like that. So I had the individual issues of Morningstar were $5 each. It's a little pricey for a single issue comic, but it's 24 pages. Yeah, it's 24 pages as opposed to 20. And plus, people, I think, are willing to pay a little bit more to support. If you're somebody who's reading indie comics, people genuinely supporting indie creators, which I always tell them how grateful I am for that. So in supporting them, they're like, if it's $1 more expensive than say something from Marvel or DC, if it's an idea that they think is unique and worth getting behind, they're happy to do it. So for a long time, I was selling, that was my $5 thing. And then when I had issues 1 and 2, it's like, well, people would buy the first issue, and if it was a 2 or 3 day show, they might come back and buy. They might buy issue 2 the next day, or sometimes they'd buy 1 or 2 at the same time, and then so on and so forth. When I got to the point where I had 5 issues, sometimes people would come out. They wouldn't necessarily buy all 5, but when I had issues 1 through 4, people would be like, they would just drop $20 and get all 4 issues at once. If they liked the idea, it was either they'd spend $20 and get 1 through 4, or they would just buy issue 1 for $5. I would sell a lot of that. So I ended up having a lot of, not a lot, but I would always have to order a lot of issue 1. Then I would have like a lower amount, but try to have equal amounts of 2, 3, and 4. Now that I have the trade, I don't have that $5 offering, because I have I have issue 5 out, and I have a sketchbook of issue 6. I'll get to the sketchbooks in a second. But now people don't really balk at buying the trade. So I'm trying to think of a way to categorize this to actually answer your question directly. Because as I think through it, the trade does seem to sell easier, because the trade does have issues 1 through 4. So it's almost like they're getting 1 issue free. Mm-hmm. And plus there's a bunch of extra back matter. And yeah, you know what? I was going to say, this is only the second convention in which I've had the trade. Yeah. and looking back at it, I sold out of all of issue. Oh, that's another thing. I sold out of all the issues of Morningstar, of all the trades of Morningstar that I had, and that's $5 more than Eye of the Gods. Eye of the Gods is a complete graphic novel, and that's $10, whereas Morningstar is issues 1 through 4, and it's $15. But people, I think that's really more about the fact that people just like the story of Morningstar more. Like it really paints a picture for people, and it draws them in.
Yeah.
So I do think for indie creators, it's much easier to sell a trade, I think, than it is to sell single issues. And I think also the fact that when you're an indie, I think part of it's because if you're an indie creator, they don't necessarily know when they're going to get back to seeing your work again. They don't know if they're going to see it in their local shop or be able to pick it up.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're like, in here, and I think also the fact that I tell them when they're reading, even when Morningstar is in single issues, I told people beginning, middle, and end. The whole thing is going to be 8 issues altogether. So it's going to be a finite series that wraps up. I think people are worried about starting a story and then it just disappearing one day and it never ending.
Yeah.
I think the fact that people know I'm going to wrap this up at a definitive point, give them a little bit more confidence to jump on with an indie creator.
Yeah.
But there was a couple of things that I was going to throw in there on top of that. I mentioned that Eye of the Gods is $10. The reason I did that is specifically because, and I don't know how, it's still going to take a couple more years in publishing more graphic novels to see how that experiment works out. But Image Comics and Vertigo tend to make the first trade in any series $10. They tend to sell it for $9.99 to make it an entry point to get people on board. The subsequent trades may be $14.99, $16.99, or higher than that. But they do it as a way to get people on board. I tend to write standalone stories.
Yeah.
So Morningstar is an ongoing series. It isn't an ongoing series. Eye of the Gods is a complete story, and whatever book I do next is going to also be a story that has a finite end. But that said, I look at the first graphic novel I published as the entry point to me as an indie creator. So I decided I would make that entry point book cheaper just to get people in the door and see if they like my work.
Yeah.
Odd in just doing the Phoenix Comic-Con, I found it odd that even though that's the entry point book, that people are willing to pay more money for Morningstar, even though it's only the first half of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me,
But
I think
it's a good thing.
Scott?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I lost you on audio there a second.
Oh, okay. I thought you were done talking, but I was going to say, a lot of times I think in some ways, for the most part, especially the difference between $5 is sort of irrelevant. Now, I see what you're saying with like big companies like Valiant and Image and stuff, because that's a whole different thing. There's so much competition, in comic book stores. But once you've got somebody's attention, and if you're an indie creator, I don't think they're going to think twice about spending an extra $5 if they want to support you. I just don't see that really being a deal breaker. I could be wrong, but.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. The one thing I was kind of curious about too with that is like, you as the person who's printing these things, you make a better price point on the trade, right? Like you actually get a better return.
Yes. Oh, and here's another thing. I am not doing offset printing. I'm using print on demand, but I'm using Amazon's print on demand service, CreateSpace.
Nice.
Yeah. As long as you've got a black and white book.
I have found
Sorry.
that's the big difference, is that my work in black and white, because I still think that it's really hard for an indie creator to get a decent price point on a color print on demand book. But in black and white, the price points are just about to the point where you're like it's within when I originally published my first book, I got that offset print, and I got 1,000 copies printed. And now now I've switched over to using Amazon's print on demand for both Eye of the Gods and for Morningstar. It's less than $1 difference which again, that can really break a creator if you're not dealing with a lot of units. But it's the price point is within. I think it's within 50. It's somewhere between 50 and 75 cents of the offset price. Somewhere in there. I can look up what the exact number is, but it's more expensive. But for a black and white trade, it's reasonable for me to pay that amount. It's that loss of it being a higher unit price is worth not having to outlay a few grand to get a bunch of books printed and then have to warehouse those books for upwards of 5 years. How long it takes for you to sell through that print run? Because it took me 5 years to sell through my initial print run. Yeah, and that includes I sold it through Diamond. Diamond ordered about 100 copies. I just barely made the minimum cutoff for the number of units that had to be ordered. It's like if 5 fewer stores ordered a copy, then Diamond would have dropped my order. But because it was a trade, so it was something that had a $10 price point, it was high enough that the actual dollar amount for Diamond to fulfill the order.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that's actually a good thing because like my last publishing experience for self-publishing was ordering a couple thousand of a comic and having to do offset, and the minimums were there were minimums you had to order in order to get a decent rate. And so like when it comes to like this book that I'm working on right now, I've totally been considering Amazon because like I looked at the prices and also the quality has just changed so much. So because back in the day you do that because like the quality of print on demand was just not good enough, Whereas now for black and white it definitely is. For color, I think you're right. I think they still have a way to go because I think they're using like fiery prints. And so for some reason on color, it just makes that like black line like shine over the color. Mm-hmm. It just looks weird. But hopefully, I mean, at some point, I'm sure they'll get there. Maybe by the time I'm done with this thing. That's cool. That's super encouraging because it's kind of making me feel like my game plan for this might actually be not that crazy. We'll see. But yeah.
Well, I think also aside from the cost of the printing cost, the other thing is that I am not a particularly fast colorist. To hire a colorist.
Yeah.
And I believe that anybody that works on projects should be fairly compensated. So I wouldn't try to cajole somebody into doing it on the cheap. So if I don't have the time to do it myself, to do it well, then it's like for that reason alone, it means that it makes more sense for me to just do a black and white book. And I look at somebody like Jeff Smith with Bone, how that was originally black and white. And it's not like I expect to have anywhere near Jeff Smith's level of success. But let's say in some dream magical world, I happen to, like with one of my books, it's popular enough and it sells well enough, I can afford to have it, reprinted again down the line in a large offset print run, where I could afford to have someone, where I could afford to properly pay someone to go back and color it. That's something I would consider.
Yeah.
So, that's more one of those things where if I were moving enough units, then I would totally say, let's go back, let's hire colors, let's get this done right. But for me doing it myself right now, not just the cost of the print, but the time cost of coloring it, it would take me forever to get a book out.
Well, also using Jeff Smith as an example, like to me, Bone is so much better in black and white. Like,
I agree.
It's beautifully colored. Like the Scholastic books are beautiful, and the image versions and stuff. But that original cartoon books, like just the black and white were just so beautiful. And to me, I feel like the color almost detracts from like these beautiful line weights that he got. And I don't know. So I like the idea of a book that's intentionally black and white. I mean, I'm all about that.
Well, I feel that way too, but I also, I mean, it's weird you get into like that whole like Ted Turner going back and colorizing old movies.
Yeah.
But generally try to have the point of view of wanting people to consume content in whatever form they want to consume it.
Yeah.
Like I've had conversations with people who they're fans, but they're curious how creators feel about digital comics versus print or single issues versus trade. And I am of the mindset that I would want someone to read a book in whatever format they want to consume it in. So I feel like, you know, if you're somebody who only reads digital books, then I would want it to be digital. If you're somebody who only reads stuff on the Kindle versus Comixology, I would want it to be able to be available on both platforms. Even though I published Eye of the Gods only as a trade, if somebody wanted to read a book simply as single issues, then I'd want them to consume it that way. And in fact, even though the with Morningstar, the single issues are going out of print for issues 1 through 4, I always bring a couple of copies of issues. Issue 1, it's out of print now. I'm not printing any more of that. But for people who I've met at conventions in previous years and they've bought issue 1 before, I will always bring a couple of issues of like 2, 3, and 4, and I keep them behind the table. And if they ask for them, I'll tell them, well, yeah, I've got them here. I've got them here for you. You know, not necessarily that I remember that specific person by name, but I've got them for anybody who already bought 1 or 2 issues and doesn't want to feel like, oh, well, I'm screwed. Now I have to buy the trade them all. Until they're out of print, I will bring a few of the other issues just for those people.
So what you're saying is that my floppies are going to be collectibles now?
Yes. That was the crux of this entire podcast. Adam Laurie said.
Limited edition collector's item.
Oh, sorry. Adam Laurie said it's too bad they didn't color Bone in the style of the original covers, and I totally agree with him. Like those original covers were cool. Like really limited color palettes, flat color. Yeah, but yeah, I think they're collectible now. I think everyone watching this, if you're subscribed to Serkworks.
No, I'm talking about Gerimi because I have Jeremy's, the floppies of Jeremy's.
Jeremy's are already collectible because they're out of print, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So
how many you got left in your run? Jeremy, how many do you have left in your run?
Yes.
How many you got left?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're dropping out a little bit. How many do I have left? Well, crap. I would have to look, but I know that I have probably. I'm pretty sure I have less than 50 of issues 2 through 4. Probably some of them I probably have less than 20.
That is crazy awesome. So you do pretty well.
So they're. I'm sorry, it got choppy again.
I was just
got choppy there too.
Yeah, so you're doing really well with your books then. I mean, like to go from such a massive run to like 50 left, that's pretty good. You know?
Well, you know, I mean, I try to look at it like I'm learning with each year.
Uh-huh.
In 2019, it'll be a decade since I published my first book, and I still feel like I have so much to learn about being a business person. And I don't think it's a bad thing for an artist to be a business person. I think I started realizing a long time ago, or I started realizing the artists that had the most creative freedom were the ones who weren't bound by other people's whims financially. And that's when I started getting interested in sort of the business side.
Yeah.
I've never but yeah, I'll try to read a business book here and there when I can. I should read more, but I try to learn as much as I can about the process. So I still feel like I'm a baby at this. I don't feel like I've got the master plan. I still have a day job. I mean, I'm lucky that my day job is a creative one, but it's not like I'm going to conventions and doing this full time. I mean, that would be fantastic if I were, but I feel like I'm not failing. That's how I feel. That's the best way to describe it. It's, I don't want to minimize the positives. I think that I'm doing good. I'm selling indie work, which is hard to do. It's hard to get people to sit there and pick up a comic by someone they've never heard of, and it's not a superhero that's a name brand. So it's not like I'm trying to. I don't want to minimize my accomplishments, but I don't want to toot my own horn either, because it's not like I've got the success of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Where everyone's,
Mm-hmm.
Right, but I think it's just it's good for indie comic artists, because you can always say, well, The Walking Dead did it, but how many people are The Walking Dead? But I mean, the fact that you are kind of, not too far off from where a lot of us are, and and it's like you said, you're not there, you're not quite where you want to be yet, but you're getting there, and that's for somebody just starting off, that's encouraging.
Well, first off, thank you. But I'll tell you what I was thinking when after I finished my first book and I started working on Morningstar, I thought to myself, if I publish a graphic novel a year, after 5 years, I should probably have enough readers that I might be able to consider doing it full time. So far, it's been almost a decade, and I've got one trade down, and I'm like almost halfway into to my third trade. Like, I'm basically maybe half. I'm half as far as I wanted to be in twice as much time.
Yeah.
But I honestly thought that it was, and this is again something from listening to podcasts from fiction and fantasy authors that talk about the business side, is that for a lot of people, for a lot of independent authors, so not necessarily comic creators, but writers in general, that it really is a matter of having a body of work. Just not, because let's say I put out my first book and people like it, if I don't have anything else for them to buy immediately after that, then it's like, well, then they have to wait around until I have another book published. But if you've got like 5 books and they can actually sit there and buy one book, read it, and be like, read something else, and then finish that and say, I want to read something else, finish that and say, I want to read something else, it may take them a little while to chew through all of your books, because they're also going to be leading their lives. They may not necessarily read them all in one big bunch, but at that point you would have enough. You've got enough of a body of work that if multiple people read it and want to keep buying more and more of it, there's enough there that you can actually have a steady stream of revenue while you're working on the next book and the next book, so that hopefully you can get to that point where you're like, okay, I can do this full time now, and I can publish a graphic novel a year. Or let's say you're somebody super fast, maybe 2 books a year. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. But, prose writers can sometimes finishing a book a month and not burning out, and doing it like over the course of a number of years, publishing a novel a month or a novel every other month. Usually it's genre fiction, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, crime, but crank them out, and with enough quality that people don't feel like they're just being pumped out, but they actually that they're getting an entertaining read for their time.
Yeah. So
I think that particularly comics, we know how labor intensive it is, and that's what I think is killing most of us.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the amount of time it takes to get to that body of work, it may take a number of years, and in that time, life gets in the way. People have kids, and just you don't necessarily put into building that body of work, or at least building as quickly as we want. I mean, I'm proud of what I've accomplished, but I still know that I haven't gotten. Not only have I not gotten to where I want to, but I'm not getting there as quickly as I'd like.
Yeah, I think that's comics by nature. Just the nature of making comics is, I have an idea of where I want to go, and I'm just not getting there as quickly as I like. You know?
Oh, there also though, back to other things that I've been doing that have been working. Because it takes me so long to finish each issue, I had the idea of selling sketchbooks of the upcoming issue. And what the sketchbooks are is that when I make my comics, I do my thumbnails, Illustrator, and I create a template with all the lettering based on, and I spot the lettering inside the panels based on my thumbnails.
Mm-hmm.
And then I print that out on vellum and I draw like my rough layouts with the word balloons. And I scan that in, and that's what I end up printing out. Basically, like I'm sitting here working on a page and it's blue line, and all it is me just printing out the panel borders and turning off the lettered the layer with the word balloons. I'm getting a bit mush mouth. But basically, to this point, I have rough pencil layouts with finished word balloons. And I started making like just little photocopied booklets like you would make an ash can.
Mm-hmm.
And I started selling those. And my whole idea was just simply, it takes me so long to finish an issue that I don't want people to lose interest in or feel like I'm not getting any work done. So right now I'm inking issue 6, but I've been selling sketchbooks at conventions of my lettered layouts of this issue. So let's say that someone's been just can't wait to see what happens next in my comic. They've bought the previous issues. They can buy the sketchbook and they can read the story, even though I'm not done with the finished book. And also, there's people who come to comic conventions and also just want sketchbooks. They may not even necessarily be interested in the comic. There's people who just like buying ash cans because they like seeing rough sketches and rough pencils of them. And then the marketing angle of it is that I only keep the sketchbooks in print until I'm done with the issue. So I'm inking this issue right now, and if I sell out of all of the sketchbooks I have of this issue, I'll print more for the next convention. But when this issue is finished and I send it off with the cover and get the full normal size comic done, I won't print any more of the sketchbooks. That sketchbook goes out of print. So it becomes a collector's item.
Nice.
Yeah, I did something similar because there was a convention and I wanted to have issue 3 of my book done, and it wasn't done. But I had, I was more than halfway. So what I ended up doing was I finished up the first. There was a breaking point in the story, but I think it was the first maybe 6 pages, and I created like a little preview. And I sold and it wasn't even really to make a profit or anything, but because people wanted something. I wanted to give them something because they were kind of waiting. So I made the preview, and then it was like a little ash can, and I sold it for, I think I sold it for $1. But it had a coupon, or maybe it was, I sold for $1 or $2. I don't remember. But it had a coupon for $1 off the actual book. So if you buy it, it's almost like, so you get them to, pick it up and they get something, but then they've got a coupon, which I don't think anyone actually claimed it, but if they wanted to, it's like they're not wasting their money just getting this one thing because they can turn it in and they can get $1 off the actual book. But I thought that was kind of a clever idea. So.
That is a good idea. I actually haven't really experimented with coupons that much.
Normally I wouldn't really,
it's always nice to
normally it would kind of be against coupons, but just the nature of what it was, I thought it kind of worked. But because it's not like I'm just giving a coupon. I mean, basically it's, they're paying me for the book, but then they get a coupon for, when the actual book comes off. They're paying me for the preview, and then they get that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so
they're getting something for their pre-order.
Yeah. So we're getting close to like an hour and a half, but I know you mentioned something about that you wanted to kind of give your pitch for Eye of the God. So I don't know if you want to kind of talk about that too. That'll just kind of give another idea of a good pitch for a book and everything, and then we can kind of wrap it up, I guess, unless you got some other stuff you want to say.
No. Let's go into Eye of the Gods. Basically, Eye of the Gods is a psychological thriller. He's cursed with visions he can't control. He can look through other people's eyes. He can see what they're seeing, but he can't control when or where these visions strike. Only to find out it's been reported in the news as a death by natural causes. So there's a conspiracy and a cover-up going on. He's got to get to the bottom of it. Basically, it's an Alfred Hitchcock thriller with a little bit of a sci-fi supernatural twist.
Yeah, I think you broke up right when the part when you said that he witnesses a murder through one of his visions. So, but yeah. Besides that, yeah, I think. He witnesses a murder only to find out it's being reported in the news as a death by natural causes. So there's a conspiracy and a cover-up, and he's got to get to the bottom of it. Right. Well, yeah. So I mean, I think there's a lot of valuable information there, and just like I said, just sitting next to Gerimi that weekend and kind of watching the way he does stuff, and sometimes, like I said, I think it's just a matter of tweaking things here or there, reordering things, because a lot of what Gerimi does, I do as well, but I just don't think I had found the right formula or the right way to do it. Like, it was all kind of out of order. So there's certain things that I'm definitely going to try. I think if I can get decent enough prices, I want to try doing kind of what Gerimi does with the postcards, but with like a sticker. And I'm almost thinking, like, if I can cater that sticker to the specific con, like an exclude, because then it's something that because they're there, it's like it would have, I could put my table number on it, but say if it's Phoenix Con, it's some kind of a Phoenix robot or something like that. So it's almost like a souvenir, something that they would want, just the fact that they're at that convention. So even if they're not necessarily into my stuff, they might hold on to it. I don't know. Just, these are some things. If I can get stickers at a decent enough price where I can kind of give them out for free and use that kind of as my handout, I think I'm going to try something like that.
I can tell you that I have been wanting for a very long time to do exclusive convention prints, not as giveaways, but to sell. But for every show I go to do a print that somehow works in, like if I were to do, do something with like a weird creature, like cowboys climbing the Space Needle, or just do something that's themed, the type of work I either something that's themed with the convention or something that's tied to like local culture or local landmarks. And it's because I don't have enough time to draw more prints, but I really feel like there's a pretty strong potential for a market there. You kind of have to be careful in terms of I would have to experiment and see how many to print, because you don't want to overprint it, because then it's something that you can only use for that one convention.
Right.
But I feel like it could be an item where what I'd probably do is start by just getting like maybe 5 or 10 printed and see if they sell at that show as a convention exclusive, because it's selling out is it's a first world problem. You always feel like, well, I'm missing out on sales. If only I had more of this. But anytime I'm lucky enough to have something that enough people liked that I sold out at a show, I am incredibly grateful. And I just realized, okay, let's be conservative, but bump this up and do more of what's working the next time. So it could be something where I just keep adding 5 of however many of these prints I get made at each show until I get to the point where I actually do have some left over. And if it ends up being like, oh, I can only sell 20 of these at a convention, so don't make more than 20 exclusives. Maybe it ends up being something like 50. Maybe end up where the convention exclusive becomes my highest selling print at every show, and then it becomes something where I have to do convention exclusive prints every year. If it turns out to be that profitable, then I have to take it seriously. But it's another thing that I have not done yet, but have been very much wanting to experiment with, because it just sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, and last year I did. Last year, sorry, go ahead, Jeremy. Go ahead, Jeremy. Can you hear
I'm
it?
sorry, I didn't say anything, but you guys broke up on my end. I didn't hear anything other than last year.
All right, so I was going to say, yeah, last year I did do a Phoenix Comic Con exclusive, and I did have to. I sold out, but I was able to print new ones, you know, because I was working through Costco print, and so I got, they have pretty fast turnaround. But like I printed like the big, I had some like 20 by 30s, and I didn't think they were sell, but I just thought they were, big enough to attract attention. But I sold some. But I don't know how all the conventions do, but I know with Phoenix Comic Con they would post them on their website. So I had actually people looking for them, because they saw it on the website and they wanted to get it. And the other thing that I did, and I haven't done this yet, but I designed that print in such a way. So it was basically a giant like mech, and it was like a Phoenix themed mech. So like Phoenix the bird, the mythical bird. And it was kind of a an homage to like Voltron and Battle of the Planets and stuff like that. So it was kind of in that vein. But when I designed it in such a way that I could almost make like a variant with something that didn't say Phoenix. So I could go in and take the type out and change some things around so I could sell it at other places, but people that bought the Phoenix version would still have an exclusive one, because like I would work the Phoenix Comic Con logo onto the armor of the robot, but I could pull that off and do something else. Like I was thinking, if I eventually do another version that I could sell other places, it would be, I might call it like Firebird or Thunderbird or something like that, with a different name for it and everything like that, and maybe change the colors around a little. So I mean that's something you can do as well. And I still sell those online. I just wouldn't sell those at any other show, But so even if you didn't go to Phoenix
that is a really good idea.
Yeah.
Now, did you bring those to the show this year?
Yeah, I did, and I pointed it out, but I didn't really sell any of them this year, and I don't know if that's because it wasn't in like the program or the website, or if it's just I didn't call enough attention to it. But yeah, I had them there, and I still I'll continue to bring them, because I didn't say it was exclusive for just that year. I just said it was exclusive to Phoenix Comic Con. So, but yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. I do like the idea of trying to make it something where you can sell another version, just so it's not, because when you spend so much time on a print, it's kind of, if you can only sell it at one show, then you're kind of limiting yourself. But if you can kind of tweak it enough where, like I said, where somebody feels like they're getting something original, and comic people are used to that because they buy variants all the time, then I think you can do that. So, but anyways.
Yeah, I think that there's something to that. Like making something that's kind of modular, where I can just change the logo and a few elements,
right?
And give it like a unique feel for each. Because I also wouldn't want someone to feel by like, oh, he's just slapping a different logo on it. Like I want to be able to change a little bit of something, so that people, because I would also like to possibly do it where every year I've got a different print for each show. I mean, that alone, like I said, I'm not getting anywhere near as many prints done as I'd like. But if I'm doing 6 shows a year, that means I'm doing, that's 6 prints right there if I'm doing a unique print every year. So I would have to find a way to maximize my time and be able to create image, maybe set each year I've got one that's going to be for my a theme that I'll use for each year, and then adapt elements for each city.
Yeah, that would be cool. That's a good idea too. I like that.
That's an idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, we could keep going and going. I mean, there's so much good stuff here, but we got to probably wrap it up at some point. So. I guess I'll just go to Josh first, and Josh, tell everyone who you are, where they can find you and everything.
Well, I'm Josh, and if I'm not here on Scott's channel when we do Artcasters, which alternates between our channels every other episode, you can find me at Joshua Kemble on YouTube, or at you can read my comic, my current graphic novel, at quarterlystories.com. What about? Oh, well, you go ahead, Scott.
Okay, I was gonna say, so you're at my channel, so you know where you can find me. I'll have a video coming out. I think I'll probably put it out on Wednesday, but another kind of Phoenix Comic-Con recap. It's pretty cool, and it does feature Gerimi, so check that out. But also, I wanted to mention that we have a newsletter. So like Josh said, the Artcasters rotates back and forth. So just so you know, and sometimes we do it at crazy times, like on a Monday, like we're doing today. So just so you know when it is and all that good stuff, it makes sense to subscribe to the newsletter, and you can find, there's a link in the description of this video on where to do that. So yeah, definitely do that. And like I said, Gerimi will be featured in the next video that I release. But if they don't check out that video, tell everyone where they can find you on like YouTube and your website and all that stuff, Gerimi.
Well, the best place to find me is gerimi.net. That's GERIMI.net. From there, there's links to my YouTube channel. You know what? There is a specific URL for it, but it's easier to just go to gerimi.net and just click on the link to YouTube. It has a link to my Instagram, my Facebook page. I've got a DeviantArt page, all the other social medias, the Twitters, the Google Pluses. I'm on all of them. You can find links from gerimi.net. It's GERIMI.net.
And you're on YouTube too, right? Or did you mention that already?
I am. And I think that the URL is youtube.com/user/Gerimi.
Yeah, I've got a link to that in the description. So
yeah.
But sometimes just because we're on YouTube, I think that might be where people might want to find you first, is through YouTube. So, but yeah, that link will be in the description of the video. So yeah, it's been great having you on. Stick around, Gerimi, and we'll kind of chat after the show, unless you got to go right away. But yeah, so we will see everyone next week, and it'll be a little while because we'll probably be back to probably our normal time around Wednesday or Thursday. But thanks for everyone who kind of joined us on this weird Monday Artcast, and we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next week.